Are you ready for rapid fire?
Oh, well, yes, I'm absolutely ready for rapid fire. Okay.
This will come up. This will come up in rapid
Gotcha.
fire. That's why I didn't want you to
Fair enough.
just
Okay.
blow it all out before we even get there. So, all right. So let's start with this. The Indianapolis Colts drafted Riley Leonard in the 6th round of the draft over the weekend. Here's the write-up The Athletic had about Leonard going to the Colts. Quote, Leonard won't wow anyone with his athleticism, but he does offer some dual threat capabilities that fall in line with what most teams desire in a quarterback these days. The 22-year-old likely won't see the field in 2025, but the idea is that he'll have time to develop into a legitimate backup or spot starter in the future. Leonard's toughness and leadership endured him to many coaches, including Colts coach Shane Steichen, who watched Leonard work out at Notre Dame's Pro Day, end quote. So, Vince, your thoughts on that assessment?
I agree with the latter portion of the assessment, that coaches fell in love with his leadership and toughness and all of those things. His number one, outside of his leadership, right? Outside of the off the field stuff. His number one asset is his athleticism.
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
What? How can you watch Riley Leonard? How can you watch anything Riley Leonard has done and say, well, he's not going to wow anyone with his athleticism? Are you kidding me?
Oh my God. Like, there was another person that when he was drafted said, well, he doesn't break tackles very well or something like that.
I saw that.
What? Like, tell me you've never watched his film without telling me you've never watched his film.
And I mean, I guess you can make an argument that he doesn't break tackles well, but maybe the reason is because he doesn't have that many tackles to break because he's running away from people most of the time because of the fact that he's a great athlete. You know, like this is literally a kid under-recruited out of Little Fairhope, Alabama, and was making plans to go play college basketball someplace. And because his coach had a relationship with David Cutcliffe at Duke, he ends up going to Duke. And by the middle of his freaking first season, he ends up going from third string to being the starting quarterback. And literally, his whole career is built on his athleticism. The fact that he is a great athlete has carried him to where he is right now, which is going to the NFL, which is honestly, you know, like the same thing with Anthony Richardson when you think about it. And great point, Beefeater. He won't tap out like Richardson did.
You took the words right out of my mouth. And because of that statement right there about how he won't tap out like Richardson, I think he's a better player than Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
And I would want him starting over Richardson. So that's why I said I agree with the leadership and the toughness and all that stuff, because I think that's accurate. Yeah. But the fact that, well, he won't be playing in 25, I disagree. Has anybody ever watched Anthony Richardson and what he does? He's injury prone too.
I feel like if all you've done, you know, like is watch film of Riley Leonard, like, you know, we've talked about it before, like the fact that like he doesn't look like he's running that fast, but then all of a sudden there he is, like literally the only dude all season who could keep up with Riley Leonard was the number 3 overall pick in the draft, Abdul Carter, Penn State. Like, remember the play where like he's trying to outrun Abdul Carter, and it's like, well, that's not happening. Like,
correct.
Like, that's the only time that's happened all season was when it was Abdul Carter. Right. And remember, like we talked about on Friday, there are 3 other edge rushers who went in the top 17 in the NFL draft this season that Notre Dame and Riley Leonard played against this season, and those guys are included on that list of dudes who were drafted that high who could not keep up with Riley Leonard.
Yes. I mean, that is like, look, if you want to say that he's not a polished passer and he's going to struggle in the NFL, if that, okay, fine. We can have that conversation, but don't tell me he's not athletic. Like that's why he's in the NFL.
Right.
Because he's an athlete. Like,
and that's, I feel like these film guys just get fooled, but because he is deceptive, you know, like with the way he is able to run and run away from people. It is a little bit deceptive, I think, unless you actually see it, you know, in person. I think you can be fooled by that a little bit. And obviously, I think a lot of people
And I think
are
that's
fooled by that.
Honestly, Sean, I think that's fair because when you're watching him in person, he tries to get that corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh, this might not be great. And all of a sudden he beats these defenders to the corner and turns it upfield and then does his like little stanky leg thing and leaves guys just hugging air.
Right.
I mean, you have to see it to appreciate it, I think. And I don't think it translates on film. I really don't.
Yeah.
You have to see it.
The other aspect of this is, and we talked about, like he didn't run a 40 at the combine. He didn't do, all of these different drills and stuff like that. I have no idea, like what his thought process was in terms of why he ultimately decided not to do that. Like, I'm sure that he's, worked just like everybody does, with a draft trainer, to get ready for all this stuff. I don't know if maybe, like his numbers would have popped like I feel like they would have popped if he had done some of that stuff. But like, to me, it's always felt like if he had done that, if he had, gone out there and thrown up like a 4.48 or, something like that in the 40 and tested really well in some of these different agilities and stuff like that, then again, like maybe that sways people a little bit, but again, the other side of that is I have no idea what his times would have looked like. So, like maybe he didn't feel like it would have been in his, best interest to do that. I don't know. But I mean, we watched him actually play football and we know the issues that Riley Leonard had, as a passer, throwing the ball downfield. But because of the fact that he is such a great athlete, it obviously made up for all that stuff. And that's a huge reason why Notre Dame played for a national championship. That and his toughness and competitiveness to go along with it.
I am very curious to see what the Colts end up doing with him because they signed Daniel Jones as a free agent. And so Riley Leonard's kind of slotted into that number 3 spot, right? Both Duke products, all of these different things. There's a lot of similarities, obviously, between him and Daniel Jones. And then you've got, Richardson as the starter. I'm interested to see how that shakes out, to be perfectly honest with you, because nobody's going to work harder than Riley Leonard. You know what I mean? And Daniel Jones has a lot to prove. He's out, with everything that happened in New York and all. I get all of that too. So it is going to be interesting to me to see how that depth chart shakes out at quarterback.
Yeah, the 2020 or the 22-year-old likely won't see the field in 2025, but the idea is he'll have time to develop into a legitimate backup or spot starter in the future. And like, I mean, you never know because guys do get hurt. So Richardson has been hurt quite a bit in his first couple of years in Indianapolis, and obviously he is a runner as well, but you do have Daniel Jones kind of to fall back on. I think. I mean, like you said, I agree with the last half of this analysis. Sure. Basically, in all likelihood, it's going to be those two guys, Richardson and Jones, this year. But if Riley Leonard, ends up being the number 3 quarterback and just gets to sit and watch and learn and all that kind of stuff, I think that next year maybe he, finds himself in a competition.
Yeah.
At least a competition to be the number 2 at the very least. All right. So there are still some people who are concerned that Notre Dame didn't have any players drafted in the first round, or even high second round of the draft. Do you buy or sell this as a concern, Vince?
Oh, it's a huge sell. And it's a clickbaity comment, to be perfectly honest with you, because that means they went to the national championship game, right, Sean? Last time I checked.
Yes.
And it takes talent to go to the national championship game. Here's the thing. Most of that talent is still at Notre Dame. So if you are a draftnik and you enjoy watching Notre Dame players get drafted, you're really going to enjoy the next few NFL drafts because there's going to be first rounders from Notre Dame in the next few drafts. And continuously until Marcus Freeman proves otherwise, that he can't recruit and he can't, get guys ready for the league. This is the final time where you're going to have to worry about Notre Dame not having a guy in the first round.
Absolutely. And like, just look at the roster. And as we touched on this a little bit on Friday, like one, it's a testament to the coaching staff and their ability to develop, but it's also a testament to their ability to recruit because, there, as we're going to talk about here in a minute, there are at least, there's more than one guy who's going to have an opportunity to be a first-round draft pick for Notre Dame a year from now.
Correct.
And there are even more who are going to be in that conversation 2 years from now, because all of the, the rising talent on this team, they're young guys, like Charles Jagusah as an example, like all of the offensive linemen had the ability to return this year. They weren't losing anyone to the NFL. Like you had no draft eligible offensive linemen. So again, like think about that. You're playing a championship game. You've got no draft eligible offensive linemen. And, look, and it's also not like it's been that long. It's only been a year since Joe Alt was picked at number 5.
That's
so it's not, and like just go back through the years. It's not like Notre Dame has had no guys go in the first round. So to me, it's more a testament to what they did this year and to what this roster looks like going forward, in terms of guys who are going to ultimately be first round draft picks.
And to be honest with you, if Benjamin Morrison doesn't get hurt, he's a first round draft pick.
And that's, I was just about to finish.
I didn't on the screen
that Michael put up there. That's absolutely right. And, and again, like think about that. The fact that you could lose a first round cornerback and the depth that they had at corner coming into this season. And it's not like Leonard Moore was a slam dunk, but you've got Mike Mickens over there able to develop this guy and looking like a guy who, if he was draft eligible in a year, he could be a first round draft pick. But, oh, by the way, you still have him for 2 years because he was just a freshman this year. And you've got that kind of talent on your roster. Like, again, another guy who's going to be ultimately a first round pick. And Micah, a New York Giants fan, he says that they've got their Micah Parsons now, almost like literally your Micah Parsons, because they're both from Penn State and both edge rushers with
Abdul Carter. Number 11 too, didn't they?
Yep, that's right. That's right. And I'm pretty sure that Abdul Carter was also an off-ball linebacker like Micah Parsons before he became an edge. So
I think he's only been an edge for like a year.
Yeah, exactly. So, on the subject of future drafts, fill in the blank. It's blank that in the CBS Sports Way Too Early 2026 mock draft, they have incoming Virginia wide receiver transfer Malachi Fields, mocked at number 8 overall in next year's draft.
Look, it's surprising. I mean, I know that Malachi Fields is a really good wide receiver, right? But I'm just so used to Notre Dame not having great receivers over the last 5 years. You know what I mean? Or the ability to get them the football so that they can get the numbers and get the accolades that they deserve. Obviously, there have been good wide receivers at Notre Dame, just not recently. And you're talking about a top 10 pick, 8, like that. That is saying something, man. Like if he ends up going 8. Notre Dame won the national championship. I don't know any other way for this to go if Malachi Fields is the number 8 pick overall, because that means he put up some gaudy numbers in this offense in 25.
This is fairly shocking to me because it feels like a guy who's transferring, if he, had the kind of skill that could have been number 1, in the first round a year from now, the 8th overall pick a year from now. It feels like he would have just put his name in the draft and gone out and turned pro this year.
Man.
So I was just stunned when I saw that they had him at number 8 in this. But, at the same time, I think this offense is going to look a lot different with who they're going to have at quarterback this year. And if Malachi Fields is even close to that, it's going to be a really good year for Notre Dame. But I just saw somebody say, the other part of this is to be someone who ends up in that range, like a top 10 pick or even a top 20 pick, you have to have the measurables out the yin yang. If the draft shows us nothing else year in and year out, it's not just who you are as a player, but it's also how you hold up in certain measurable, what's your 40 time, what's your vertical, what's your hand size, all these crazy different things. So it's going to be really Curious to see what kind of physical specimen that we see in Malachi Fields when he rolls in here.
I feel like, look, I think it's a reach that he's going to be in the top 10.
Feels like
I do. Let me watch a few games with him in a Notre Dame helmet, and things like that. But that's a lofty prediction right there.
I think so as well.
For a wide receiver, that's wild.
Totally shocked.
It'd be great. Look, that would be great. But that's going to be tough.
Feels a bit high end right now.
Yeah, in the top end of that mock draft, as Joe M says, I don't necessarily agree with some of the top end picks in that draft. But it's just for fun. It's for something to talk about.
Look, even if Fields ends up being a second round pick, that would what that would mean for Notre Dame. That I think you could live with that. A wide receiver taken in the second round.
High day 2. Sign me up. Are you kidding me?
Yep.
Absolutely. Sign me up.
So fill in the blank. It's blank that CBS also has Jeremiyah Love going number 14 to the Cowboys and Charles Jagusah going number 19 to Tampa Bay in that mock.
3 Notre Dame players in the first round in the top 20 would be quite the statement to make. And I know, Georgia, Ohio State, they're used to those kinds of things. That would be a statement to make if you're Notre Dame. There's no doubt about it. And, again, Jeremiyah Love in the first round, Malachi Fields in the first round, 2 offensive players in the 3 offensive players. So 3 offensive players in the first round for Notre Dame. That's nuts. It'd be great, but I am not holding my breath.
Yeah, I'm not holding my breath either, but at the same time,
you'd love
they're saying Love is going to go number 14. Do I see him going to the Cowboys at number 14? One, I hope not, because if the Cowboys are number 14, that's only 2 spots lower than where they picked at number 12, and they were below 500 this year. So that's while it would be great to have Jeremiyah Love, what gets you to picking?
Yeah, because you didn't have a great season, is what you're saying.
Would not be great. So I would not like that. But bigger picture, if Notre Dame, 2 guys on the existing roster, this goes to what we were talking about before, don't sweat, what the draft looked like this year. Look at what's coming up in the future. Because I think we're going to hear multiple guys every year for the next several years from Notre Dame going in the first round.
Yes.
I don't know that we're going to hear 3, 4, like Michigan and Ohio State, but I do think that we're going to start to hear multiple guys for Notre Dame going in the first, because just look at the offensive line. They've always got offensive linemen picked in the first, and now guys like Jeremiyah Love, even Jadarian Price, he might not be a first round guy, but he's got a chance to be at least a second round guy, so we're going to see more and more of them. I think that's the most exciting thing about seeing something like that.
Agreed.
Beefeater says, honest question, is there really a 5-round difference between the Leonard who was throwing strikes to Greathouse and Cam Ward who quit during a bowl game? Where the 2 quarterbacks from the Natty went in the 6th round.
Is there a 5-round difference? No, but there was on this weekend. It is what it is. Drafts are one thing, and I think quarterbacks generally at the top of the draft get overdrafted. Okay. I personally don't think I would like to build my franchise around Cam Ward. That's me. He was the consensus number 1 quarterback in the draft. Okay, fine. I think let's see what happens with second contracts. Let's see where things are at. I think that gap is a lot closer than it was, but that's the way people saw it. So, it is what it is.
By the way, Cam Ward, the number 1 overall pick in this draft, ended up being the least talked about guy, I think. In this year's draft, as it all came out.
It was just understood he was going to be the number 1 guy, and the consensus apparently, or whoever makes these rankings, the guy that they thought was the number 2 quarterback ended up being how many down? 6 or 7? The 6th or 7th quarterback taken, something along those lines.
Yeah, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a little bit, though. Decaf. I saw Tobias Merriweather back in the portal.
Oh, really?
Today. Yep. Apparently leaving Cal after one season. Yep.
I thought he was doing pretty good early on. I think he got injured. Not 100% on that, but it's Cal football, so
I'm pretty sure he did. I saw like somebody posted there was like a nice play, nice catch or something that he made in their spring game or something like that. But
yep.
Fill in the blank. The fact that Alabama is 4-4 in its last 8 games against FBS opponents is blank.
Whoa. That's surprising. That is a surprising stat. Look, Alabama is, if anybody thought that they were just going to pick up where they left off when Nick Saban walked out the door, then they were sadly mistaken. There was a lot of roster turnover, obviously, when you change the head coach. There was a lot of differences and things like that. It's going to take some time for them to be elite if they ever are elite again, which they will be. But will they be as consistently elite as they were under Nick Saban? I do not think so. So I think the talent has spread out much more. But 4-4 against FBS teams, that's not good. They need to be much better than that if they're going to be in the conversation.
And I agree with like the first part of what you're saying. I think that there was the thought that just because it's Alabama, Kalen DeBoer was going to go in there and be able to keep doing things at the same level that Nick Saban was able to do it, and there was all this outcry about they deserve to be in the playoff. Well, guess what? Just like the team that won the national championship, they lost to Michigan in their bowl game, So like that's one of the L's that they got hung on them at the end of the season. So I never thought it was going to be easy. And, let's also not forget that Vanderbilt is one of those 4 L's that they took. Vanderbilt, Tennessee, a mediocre Oklahoma team, and a mediocre Michigan team. That's who beat them.
They got smoked by Oklahoma. Like they had every opportunity to make it into the playoff if they could just beat Oklahoma, and they couldn't do it.
Yep.
And it was ugly.
Yep, exactly. Everything on the line. Dolly Madison, how about that? Big super chat.
Woo!
Appreciate that.
Take that, Big Show. Let's go. Thanks, Dolly.
So we're going to start doing something on the subject of Alabama. We're going to start doing something that I thought would be fun. Rather than just, like last summer, we, predicted the records of some of these different teams.
Yes.
This year,
there we go.
We're going to guess. We're going to look at the schedule.
Okay.
And we're going to try to guess what FanDuel has the over-under win total set for these teams. So you can look at the schedule. Don't look at FanDuel.
I'm not. I got the schedule in front of me.
Okay. So Alabama, we're going to go through the schedule, and we're going to try to guess, and don't anybody say it in the chat. You can make your guesses, but don't say it if you've seen it. So we're going to go through the schedule, and we're going to try to guess what they've got the over-under set for Alabama. Okay? So they open at Florida State. Then they host Louisiana Monroe. Then they host Wisconsin. Then they're at Georgia. They host Vanderbilt. At Missouri. Host Tennessee. At South Carolina. They host LSU. Host Oklahoma. Host Eastern Illinois. And at Auburn.
Okay.
I only have 5 guaranteed wins, I think, going through that.
Okay.
Now that's guaranteed.
Yeah, right.
I'm not saying that they're not going to, that they're going to lose. So
I got you.
So looking at that schedule, Vince, What do you think Alabama's over-under total is going to be?
Based on that schedule, I think the over-under should be 9.5.
You're going to go 9.5.
I'm going to go 9.5.
I think it's going to be 8.5.
Wow.
Okay, I haven't looked. Got my phone here.
Holy cow. Yeah, I mean, I just think they're going to get a bump for just being Alabama. What do we got?
You got it. 9.5.
Yes. And you know I didn't cheat because I didn't even know what the questions were.
I trust you. 9.5. And I think that, kind of like you're saying, maybe because they're Alabama, they get that little bump there. But
I like this game.
I look, I gave them Florida State.
Okay.
I gave them Louisiana Monroe. I gave them Wisconsin.
Okay, so 3-0.
But then, again, okay, now you go to Georgia. I'm not giving them that.
No, God, no.
Vanderbilt, I think I might have even given them that. So that's
I would give that to them, yeah.
At Missouri, I think was my 5th game.
Yep.
But then you've got Tennessee, at South Carolina,
maybe
LSU.
So that one's at Alabama. And how much do we trust Brian Kelly on the road in November?
But again,
I know
you look at Alabama like it's Nick Saban's Alabama.
Yeah, it's still Alabama's home field.
True.
You know what I mean? And it's still going to be a big game. And both of those teams, both of those teams will be in contention for a playoff spot, right? And, in November, SEC, all that nonsense, like they're going to be in the conversation.
Right.
So I don't know. I put my money on Alabama, I suppose, but that's going to be a big game right there. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got Oklahoma, who beat them last year, Eastern Illinois, and then at Auburn. So,
I mean, obviously,
honestly, I would go under the 9.5. I would give them 9, but I'm not going to give them much more than that.
So it was 5 going into Tennessee, right? Or is that what it was? Let's see. 1, 2.
I think so.
4.
Could you imagine if Vanderbilt beats Alabama 2 years in a row?
7, 8, 9. I think they're going to hit 9.
That's what I think.
Yeah. So that's why 9.5 is a good number, man.
No, that's true. I mean, that's why 8.5 would have all. I guess.
Yeah, I could see that.
Now that I think about it, 8.5 probably would have been a little bit.
Because a lot of people are going to take the over on that.
Yeah, exactly.
So 9.5.
9.5 makes it more challenging.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Good number. Good call.
I love it.
So that's going to be the game. That's how we're going to do it. When we
love it. That's going to be a fun game.
Yeah,
it's going to be a fun game.
I think so too. All right. So last question of the night. Shedeur Sanders. I mean, take your victory lap because ultimately I think you're right. I think it's a combination of, one, it feels like the myth of him being a first-round pick was totally media driven.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I do feel like it's such an odd thing with Deion. Because you remember the first year with Deion where he was combative and like if you weren't saying all these nice things about him.
Yep.
I feel like there's so many, especially like the last couple of weeks watching draft coverage. I feel like there are so many people who are like who don't want to say anything negative about Deion and don't want to say anything negative about Shedeur because they want to keep the relationship open. Like they don't want to be on Deion's bad side.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of that came into play during this whole process. And you've got a guy who obviously is talented, but not talented enough to warrant that high first-round pick. And when you listen to all this stuff that now these, different NFL people are saying, like they never had him rated that high. And when you throw in all this extra stuff that comes with Deion, it just was not worth it. And it's just amazing, though, that a guy that people were talking about as maybe being the number 3 overall pick ended up going in the 5th round. I don't think we've ever seen that before.
No, that was a slide that we've never seen. The fact that it went to day 3 was nuts. It was nuts, and I get it. like, I get it sitting here as me, you know what I mean? And who I would draft on my mythical team that I have no control over, obviously, because I don't own an NFL team, right? So, like, I understand where my pettiness comes into play, where I wouldn't want him on my team. But the fact that all 32 NFL teams had multiple picks and opportunities to bring him into the fold, and they decided, you know what? We're good, you know? And the fact that Cleveland also drafted other quarterbacks or another quarterback ahead of him. Like, I am surprised for sure, because regardless of what I thought about him as a player or as an off the field and all of those different things, I was still surprised he fell as far as he did. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. But I think that, you know, once you're not picked in the first round or probably the top half of the second round, now you're viewed as a backup. Like, you're not viewed as a guy who's going to be battling, you know, for a number one position, because there were only a handful of teams that really had a true quarterback need to begin with. And so once those teams show that they're not interested in you, and now, you know, again, like, once you get past the second round, which he obviously did, third round and on, you're viewed as a guy who's just going to be a backup. And again, do you want all this circus that's going to come with, you know, being a backup quarterback?
Right.
I think that played a huge factor once you got to that point. And then, you know, like, you watch the video of, you know, Kevin Stefanski and the Browns general manager, Andrew Berry, when they make the pick, you know, Berry's like, he's not showing any emotion. It feels like this pick was probably bestowed upon them by ownership for whatever reason. You know, like, the owner said, you know, we're going to draft Shedeur Sanders, which is really interesting, because again, now you look at the Browns quarterback situation, which has always been so nuts to begin with.
Oh my goodness.
And now you've got all these quarterbacks.
Yeah. They have 5 quarterbacks on the roster.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, Deshaun Watson's not going to be, but
right. He's on there now. He's the 5th one, but he is in the 5th slot. Okay. So you got Joe Flacco, you got Kenny Pickett, you got Dylan Gabriel, and you got Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders is in the 4th slot right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, you've got Dion coming in for the meetings and how he's going to take a backseat to no quarterback and all of these different things, man. Like, I'll be honest with you, I would not be surprised if Cleveland was like, you know what, we're good.
Yeah.
We're going to cut you.
Get out of mini camp. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
I could really see it. I really could. And I do think Shedeur is a good person. Like, I don't really have an issue with him as a person. Everybody's like, well, he's never done anything with the law, blah, 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 blah. I get it. But he has been told his entire life how good he is.
Mm-hmm.
And he believes it. And he doesn't stop talking about it. And the fact that he was so unprepared for these interviews, because, you know.
Well, and apparently he was just tanking interviews for teams that he didn't want any part of. You know,
I mean,
like,
that's so wrong.
That's a red flag.
It's a huge red flag.
Yeah.
It's a absolutely huge red flag. And Christopher says if his last name was anything other than Sanders, we wouldn't even be talking about it. To a degree, you're absolutely correct. But if any quarterback of a Power 4 team went into these interviews with the way he did and said the things that he did in press conferences at the combine and all of these different things, and, you know, whoever's dad can be tweeting, because guess what? If you are considered a top quarterback in the draft, okay, for whatever reason, and dad is tweeting stuff, I don't care what dad's name is. It could be whoever senior, right? And dad's tweeting, he takes a backseat to no one and blah, 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 blah. People are going to find that and they're going to post it and they're going to put it out there. Is it going to get more traction because it's Dion? Absolutely. But any quarterback that takes the process as unseriously as it was taken, we're going to talk about it.
Well, and any quarterback who is projected to go potentially number 3 overall and ends up sliding to the 5th round, you're going to talk about it. Like,
absolutely.
Brady Quinn only slid to the end of the first round, and like that was a major thing. Like, remember when that happened?
And Aaron Rodgers, when he slid.
Aaron Rodgers, like, just sliding to the end of the first round as opposed to the top of the first round is a big thing. It's going to be talked about. But when you slide 5 rounds down, that's like, people are going to talk about it. This is a good point, Michael, because I heard this as well. Like, he and Cam Ward were working out together, and when you watch Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders side by side, and like, you have a literal comparison right there doing the same things. It was night and day. Cam Ward was head and shoulders better.
I just, if we're just talking football wise, he's a good quarterback. He's not a difference making quarterback, in my opinion. Again, not somebody I'm going to, base my franchise on, build my franchise around. It's just not somebody that I would do that. And then you add the circus that is towed along with him, and it's really not worth it. So I am surprised he slid as far as he did, but I think it was probably the right move.
Ultimately, I think it was as well.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up with that. Good offensive player ranking to start the show off
that was
tonight.
Fun. Yeah. I'm looking forward to defense.
Do the defense next week.
Yeah.
And we'll have some more fun with that. Tomorrow, got a little guest on the show. Brian Higgins from ESPN in Syracuse is going to join me. So we'll get the Syracuse perspective.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
That's must-see TV right there.
I think so as well. We'll get the Syracuse perspective on the Steve Angeli transfer.
I want to hear, not that you need to ask my questions, but I want to hear what he thinks about the competition at quarterback and if there's going to be one. Like, what are your thoughts there, man? Like, I want to hear what the Syracuse people are saying, because I believe the other guy was like announced as the starter, and then they went and got Steve Angeli. So we're back to square one. Like, what's going on?
Yep.
So
for sure, that will come up. All right. Smash that like button before you leave. We do appreciate you being here as always, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.